Zoos are great and everyone loves to get a glimpse at some rare animals, but from time to time, things don't go as planned. Join us as we have a look at some of the most shocking moments to happen at the zoo. Number 10. Tatiana the Tiger. Tigers are one of the most powerful animals on land, and they're also some of the fastest big cats of their species, weighing up to a shocking 600 pounds. But sometimes tigers in the wild have been known to kill hundreds of herbivores in their lifetime just for the sake of themselves or of their families. Tigers are in fact killing machines of nature, and they can run incredibly fast in comparison to humans and have incredible jaw strength. So it probably would be very frightening if one of these powerful creatures were to escape their enclosure, right? Well, unfortunately, that's exactly what would occur at the Denver Zoo when a certain tiger named Tatiana would escape. Tatiana is a Siberian tiger, born in the Denver Zoo in 2003, and then later would be transferred to the San Francisco Zoo. In 2007, on Christmas Day, the tiger somehow escaped from its zoo enclosure, which was surrounded by a 15-foot moat and a 20-foot-high wall. Tatiana then went on to attack and kill a 17-year-old boy, as well as injuring two more individuals during her spree of freedom. One of the victims suffered cuts to his neck, head, and chest, and his jugular vein was also sliced by Tatiana's teeth. When police arrived on the scene, the tiger turned her attention to the officers, who then shot the 350-pound jungle cat down, killing her right where she stood. Zoo officials are still absolutely dumbfounded as to how the tiger ever managed to escape her captivity. And a year before the deadly attack, Tatiana had also publicly attacked her trainer during a feeding session. So it's not exactly like it was the first time that the tiger had ever shown any kind of aggression. Number 9. A home zoo gone wrong. Now, zoos can be really entertaining, but they're actually hard to keep up with, and require a large staff in order to clean and feed and care for all of the animals. And it's extremely important to make sure that the creatures don't escape and then wreak havoc all over the place. So, who in the world would want to have a zoo in their house? Because trust me, it's not nearly as cool as it seems in the movies. Well, that's exactly what happened to a Vietnam War veteran named Terry Thompson, who had his own zoo called the Muskingum County Animal Farm in Ohio. Terry's zoo was chock full of exotic animals, and Thompson had been in trouble with the authorities for years for providing inadequate and unsafe housing for them. In 2011, the 61-year-old zoo owner decided that he had had enough, and that's when he freed every single one of his 55 animals and then shot himself in the head. The town of Zanesville, Ohio would become overrun with wild and exotic animals, which included 18 Bengal tigers, 17 lions, 6 black bears, 3 mountain lions, a monkey, some grizzly bears, and some baboons. During all of the chaos, a lion would even manage to eat one of the baboons. Officials from the town were understandably overwhelmed, and in order to prevent all of the animals from infiltrating the town completely, a mass slaughter had to occur. Every single one of the animals were shot down and killed. It may have been one of the biggest releases of dangerous carnivores in United States history. Number 8. Into the lion's den. Drugs are almost never a good idea, and when you're on drugs, especially meth, you do a whole lot of things that you wouldn't have done otherwise. You know, like jumping into a lion's den. It does sound crazy, and no one would do that, right? Because it's a one-way ticket to the grave. Well, unfortunately, it did happen in Taiwan to one man. A 46-year-old man named Jang Ho Chen was extremely mentally unstable and abusing amphetamines and alcohol. So what's a man to do but to climb into the lion's den at the Taipei, Taiwan Zoo? The man took off his jacket and waved it around as if he were herding a bullfight. And the lions that were inside reacted by attacking him, grabbing the jacket, and then mauling him. Surprisingly, it didn't exactly prompt him to try and escape out of the animal enclosure, and instead, he sat down on a log and waited to see what they would do next. That's when the lion would attack him again, biting his arm and then once more on the leg. And it was possibly about the least intelligent thing that he could do in the situation. That's because he stayed in and continued to be attacked by the lions. Officials were only able to get the man out after shooting them with tranquilizer guns and then deterring him away from him with a fire hose. When asked later why he decided to go in and mess with the lions, he said that God had told him to do it. Obviously, kids, drugs are bad. Number 7. Tilikum, the killer whale. Whales are very large and majestic creatures. However, they're also very terrifying up close, as their size is something to be in awe of. Some whales can even reach multiple tons in weight, which is no small feat, because most cars don't even equal 2 tons. Tilikum, nicknamed Tilly, was a huge 12,000-pound orca whale who was captured in Iceland in 1983. Tilikum would be kept in captivity at SeaWorld, where he was then trained and forced to perform for thousands of people every single day. Finally, it would seem as though Tilikum had had enough, and he would continuously act out at the members of the staff and even his trainers who worked with him. Of course, you would be angry too if you were cooped up all day in an enclosure and stared at by hundreds of people. Tilly became infamous for killing 3 people during his 30 years of imprisonment, and you would think that after the first or even the second time he would have been let go or set free, right? Actually, he went on to kill multiple trainers in the course of his career at SeaWorld. First, he killed a marine biology student who slipped accidentally into the tank in 1991. Then, a visitor would sneak into the tank after SeaWorld closed in 1999, and he also killed one of his trainers just after a show in 2010. Some would even say that Tilikum was the inspiration behind the whistleblowing documentary Blackfish, which revealed the multiple issues in keeping large wild animals in enclosed captivity. Number 6. Who let the chimps out? Chimpanzees can look cute and cuddly, and you may even want one as a pet. However, some chimpanzees can be absolutely brutal to their own species, and after this incident, apparently to other humans and even their caretakers. One chimpanzee would escape its captivity in Japan in the spring of 2016 and was able to climb around the electrical wires, which he probably thought was a lot of fun, but was actually extremely dangerous. That's because the chimp could have been electrocuted, or he could have messed up the power for the entire city. The chimp would continue to hang on the power lines, while people stared up in amazement that it had gotten loose in the first place. The animal then attempted to take a swing at a person who was up in the power lines attempting to rescue it and get it down. The chimp would eventually be shot down with a tranquilizer, and it fell from the power lines but was caught by a team of people. The chimp would end up being quickly rushed to the trunk of an ambulance, and remarkably, no one or the chimp was hurt, and it survived the fall. Number 5. Binky the polar bear. Now don't get me wrong, polar bears can be cute and make for good holiday commercials, but they're actually very dangerous. A 29-year-old woman from Australia had her thigh thoroughly engulfed in the mouth of a nearly 1,000-pound polar bear named Binky at the Berlin Zoo. The woman, well, she foolishly trespassed to try and get a better shot of the animal, and ended up getting practically eaten by the large bear. Some onlookers would attempt to help her by hitting the bear with tree branches. That was until zoo officials got to the scene. And that's where he was essentially chomping down on her leg like a chicken wing while she remained helpless. You see, a polar bear's canine teeth are actually longer and sharper and spaced much wider apart than any other bear, and that allows them to grasp onto and tear off chunks of meat without any effort. The bear grabbed the unsuspecting woman with his paws while she was trying to take a photo with her camera and just narrowly missed her femoral artery with his giant teeth. So, fortunately for her, she made it out alive. Number 4. A drunk man's mistake. This intoxicated man had the unfortunate experience of falling into a grizzly bear's captivity area at a zoo in Switzerland. The bear would immediately begin to dig into his new victim, ripping, biting, and tearing at his limbs. Concerned onlookers would then begin screaming for help from the zoo officials, and people also tried to throw many things in order to provide a distraction, like food and other objects. However, the bear was clearly more interested in the human who had trespassed into his territory, The hungry grizzly would continue to take large bites out of the man as he let out blood-curdling screams. It looked as though he was attempting to stay still so that the bear would leave him alone, because most experts recommend that you play dead. However, that plan didn't work. Zoo guards were eventually able to shoot the bear down with a tranquilizer, and it allowed the man to be rescued. Number 3. Rhinos on the loose. 3 female rhinoceroses managed to escape their enclosure at a safari zoo in Israel. Security guards apparently fell asleep and could be seen chasing them as they ran out of a side gate that had been kept open for visitors. Although if the security guards had actually caught up to them, what in the world were they planning on doing? Because it's not like they could have rounded up these animals on their own. The 3 rhinos were eventually caught and then brought back into the zoo before they were able to escape out to the parking lot. However, needless to say, the security personnel at the zoo was changed, and some believe that the rhinos even attempted to escape because of the terrible conditions that they were being forced to live in. Number 2. Don't swim with the monkeys. A man in Brazil decided to get rip-roaring drunk and then go to the zoo, because that's what you do. While inebriated, he took off his shirt and then trespassed into the spider monkey enclosure. The man decided that it was too hot, so he jumped into the water and attempted to swim with the monkeys, but ended up being attacked instead. The man waited in the water until one monkey came forward and took a bite out of his arm. It still didn't deter him though, because he then went back to get even closer. This time he was grabbed by multiple monkeys, and they must have been hungry because they began biting and clawing at him. He would eventually be pulled out of the captivity area by a group of men, and the man experienced serious injuries to his arms and shoulder, but fortunately for him, he would survive the attack. Number 1. Polar bear bait. One enthusiastic zoogoer just couldn't wait too long to get her eyes on the polar bears at the Berlin Zoo, and she wound up getting much closer to the bears than she ever planned. The woman hopped into the polar bear enclosure during feeding time, which, isn't exactly the smartest thing to do, but later reports would confirm that she was suffering from depression due to not being able to find a job. During the attempted rescue, the woman fell from the rope that she was being pulled up on due to the fact that she was both overweight and the people pulling her up would lose their grip. That's when she cascaded back into the water where another bear would attempt to take a bite out of her lower half. Fortunately, the second attempt to get her out of the water was successful, and she was then taken out of chomping distance. The woman would later be charged with breaching the peace after having been taken to intensive care. No word on whether or not she ever found a job. Thanks for watching. Be sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you next time.